I bought a cheap apartment. A month later, I found out that people were legally registered to live there, and I couldn't evict them. I'm not some fool off the street. At least, that's what I told myself back then. 31 years old, worked my ass off since I was a teenager, never took a loan I couldn't pay. I'd been living in overpriced rentals for most of my adult life, every lease signed like a slow bleed. So when I saw the listing, 2-bedroom condo, solid location, 10 grand under market, it felt like a door finally opened. The seller? Quiet guy, older, said he was moving states. Needed a quick sale. I figured maybe divorce, maybe debt. People don't unload property like that without a reason, but I didn't ask too many questions. Not my business. I had cash saved, a loan pre-approved, and this place didn't need much work. Just a new coat of paint and a couple trips to Home Depot. Paperwork was clean, too clean. Went through in less than 3 weeks. My realtor raised an eyebrow but shrugged. Sometimes people just want out, he said. I signed the dotted lines in a chilly office with bad coffee, shook hands, and walked out a homeowner. The first night, I brought over a mattress and a bottle of cheap whiskey. No furniture, no curtains, just me and my new walls. I laid on the floor with the bottle by my side, staring at the ceiling like it was a movie screen. No neighbors blasting music through paper walls, no landlord trying to hike my rent 8% a year. Just peace. My keys clicked in the lock like they belonged. I unpacked slow, made coffee in the kitchen that still smelled like someone else's detergent. I bought a couch off Craigslist, lugged it up the stairs by myself. Got bruises on both arms. Didn't care. This was mine. I was proud. Maybe too proud. I told a couple buddies from work, posted a picture online, me holding the keys like I'd won something. Finally out of the rental game, I wrote. Big man now. Got a lot of thumbs up. A few congrats from people I hadn't spoken to in years. The first week, I slept like a rock. Quiet neighborhood, streetlights casting soft shadows. No sirens, no yelling. I'd walk barefoot to the fridge at night just because I could. My name on the deed. My name on the mailbox. That feeling? Like you finally made it somewhere. Then the mail started showing up. Not for me. Not junk either, official envelopes. Government stamps, full names I didn't recognize. To Mr. L. Ramirez, one read. Another, Cassandra Bell, official notice enclosed. At first, I figured they were old pieces the post office hadn't caught up on. I wrote, return to sender, on each and dropped them back in the box. But they kept coming. One morning, there were 5 of them. All different names, all marked, important. That same day, my doorbell rang at 7:40 a.m. A woman in her 50s stood outside. Hair in a bun, eyes like steel. No smile. Hi, she said. I'm here to check on my brother. He lives here. I blinked. I'm sorry. This unit. He's registered here. Lived here for years. I told her she had the wrong place. She pulled out a piece of paper, a utility bill, with my address and someone else's name. Same apartment number. Same street. My name's on the deed, I said, showing her my ID and the paperwork on my phone. I just bought it. She didn't argue. Just looked at me with this hollow kind of pity. Well, she said, you'll want to look into that. And she walked away. That was the first crack. You ever get the feeling that something isn't just wrong, but off? Like a story that's missing its middle pages? That day, I pulled every document I had. Checked the county's registry site. It showed me, clear as day, as the new legal owner. But the names I saw in those letters, they were still listed as occupants. Legally registered. Not tenants. residents. And just like that, the air in my home felt different. Like it wasn't mine anymore. Like maybe it never was. The next knock came 3 days later. This one, I didn't answer. I watched through the peephole as a man in a hoodie stood there, arms crossed, rocking on his heels like he had all the time in the world. He knocked again, 3 times, deliberate. Not aggressive. Just, like he belonged. Then he walked away. Not toward the stairs, toward the side of the building. I opened the door a crack and looked out. Nothing. Just the quiet hallway. That night, I heard the shower running. I lived alone. It came from the guest bathroom, the one at the end of the hall, the one I barely used. For a second I froze, thinking maybe I'd left it on somehow. But then I heard a cough. A throat clearing. A man's voice. I grabbed the tire iron I kept by the door, old habit from a bad neighborhood years ago, and walked down the hallway slow. Each step like walking into something I couldn't name. I twisted the knob. It was locked. Then I knocked. Who's in there? No answer. I banged harder. This is my place. You need to get the hell out. The water shut off. A moment later, the door cracked open. The man from the hoodie stood there, towel over his shoulder like he lived here. His eyes scanned me, no fear, no apology. You must be the new guy, he said. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He walked right past me, dripping water on my floors, and ducked into the hallway closet. Pulled out a box I hadn't noticed before. My stuff, he said, like that explained anything. I'll be out by next week. Wait, what? Who the hell are you? He didn't look back. Name's Lewis. Been staying here on and off. My cousin used to own the place. Maybe still does. Depends on which lawyer you ask. That was the moment I realized I was screwed. The next morning, I made calls. First to my realtor. She sounded as surprised as I was. Told me she'd check the title again, make sure nothing had slipped past. Then to the title company. They confirmed, yes, I owned the property. No, there were no liens. No legal tenants. But what about people registered to live here? I asked. Like, on paper? Utilities, voter rolls, whatever? They hesitated. Then said that occupancy status isn't necessarily erased by a title transfer. Depends on local law, how the move-out was handled. If someone's been receiving mail there, listed on leases before, even just squatting with some sort of previous tie, getting them out's not a knock-and-boot kind of deal. I tried the police next. They wouldn't come. This is a civil matter, the officer on the phone said. We can't remove someone from a residence without a court order, even if you're the owner. But I bought this place. Doesn't matter, she cut me off. You need to file for an eviction. But he's not a tenant. She sighed. That might make it harder. Lewis started showing up more often. Sometimes he'd bring takeout. Once, he had a date over. I heard them laughing in my kitchen at midnight. I stood in my own bedroom, teeth grinding. He never took a key, I never gave him one. But he had ways in. Claimed he had an old copy, or that the door was always open before. One time I came home and found him watching basketball on my couch, remote in hand. You got a good TV, he said. I called the locksmith that night. Changed every lock in the place. Front door, side door, windows. 3 days later, the lock was broken. Drilled. A neat circle through the core. And on the coffee table? A pack of keys. Lewis looked up at me, chewing popcorn. You really think that's gonna stop me? He said. I stopped sleeping. Started locking my bedroom door at night like I was the one trespassing. Every morning I woke up and checked the hallway like I was in a horror movie, quietly, carefully, like something might be waiting behind the corner. I found cigarette butts in the sink. A half-empty beer in the shower. A jacket I didn't own hanging in my closet. I started hearing more noises too. Voices, movement. At least 2 other people, different voices. One of them had a dog. I never saw the dog, just heard the tags jingling, the claws tapping the tile. I'd sit in the kitchen at 2 a.m., hands wrapped around a coffee mug, waiting for the next sound. Then the mail came again. This time, it wasn't just envelopes. It was a government form, notice of residency confirmation. Addressed to Cassandra Bell. Same name from the earlier letters. It confirmed she was still registered as living there. The fine print said it could take up to 120 days to update registry information. If challenged in court, the case might be reviewed. And until then? She had the right to use the premises. Even if I owned it. That's when the anxiety became something else. Not fear. Not yet. But the realization that I wasn't in control anymore. That owning something on paper doesn't mean you can live in it. That home and ownership aren't always the same thing. Not when the system doesn't care about the difference. I started counting toothbrushes. There were 4 in the bathroom. Different colors. Only one was mine. I started counting towels, mugs, shoes near the door, any little detail that might confirm what I already knew. I wasn't alone in this place. Not just Louis. Not just one intruder. There were others. They weren't just visiting. They were living here. And I couldn't stop it. Louis had this way of making it all seem normal. Like he was the one doing me a favor. "You want me to talk to Cass," he said one morning, sipping coffee he brewed with my beans. "She can be a little uptight, but she'll leave eventually. She's just got some stuff to figure out." Cass? As in Cassandra Bell? He raised an eyebrow like I'd spoken out of turn. "She's family," he said. "You should be a little more respectful." Family. Like that meant something to me. That week I took a day off work just to hit every office I could think of. County housing. Civil court. Registrar's office. I carried a folder stuffed with everything, deed, ID, proof of purchase, utility bills in my name. I slammed it down on every counter like a man begging for a fire extinguisher while his house burned down. At the registrar's office, a man in khakis and a tucked-in polo scanned my papers with the bored disinterest of someone half asleep. "Yeah," he said. "They're on file. 4 names. Been registered here for a while." "But how? I own the place." He shrugged. "Occupancy registration isn't tied to ownership in this state. If they had residence before the title transferred, the court has to formally nullify their rights, especially if no eviction was filed during closing." "What does that mean?" I asked, hands gripping the counter. "It means you bought a place with people already living in it. And now you've got to get them out." "How do I do that?" He handed me a thick pamphlet, bound with a staple and the smell of hopeless bureaucracy. "Civil eviction," he said. "Good luck. Could take a few months." That night, I came home to find the living room rearranged. Not just moved, redecorated. Different couch cushions. A rug I didn't own. Framed pictures on the wall, some guy in a graduation gown, a couple holding hands at a park, a photo of a baby in a pumpkin costume. I stood there like I'd walked into the wrong house. Louis appeared in the hallway, chewing something. "Oh, yeah," he said. "Cass said it felt too cold in here. You don't mind, right?" I didn't answer. He clapped a hand on my shoulder like we were old friends. "You'll get used to it." I started sleeping in my truck. At least out there, I could lock the doors and know no one else had a key. Inside the apartment, the locks were meaningless. Every time I changed one, they drilled through it like I was setting up a challenge. I even caught them once, on camera, a grainy clip of a woman I didn't know, with a drill in hand, popping the deadbolt like she was making a sandwich. The cops came when I showed them the footage. 2 cruisers. I thought this was it. I thought, finally, someone's gonna treat this like the crime it is. But after 20 minutes, the officer returned with a shrug. We can't arrest her. She broke in. She claims she's lived here for months. Says her mail comes here. The lock change wasn't authorized, in her view. But I own it. Sir, he said, almost like he pitied me, ownership doesn't equal exclusive rights of entry when legal occupancy is in dispute. Until it's resolved in court, it's a civil matter. Then what the hell do I do? He handed me a card with a lawyer's name and walked away. That was the night I realized I couldn't beat them by force. I needed help. Real help. So I called the lawyer. The one the officer gave me. A woman named Trish Yarrow. Small office, no fancy website. She picked up the phone herself. I told her everything. She didn't laugh. Didn't act surprised. Just asked if I could come in the next day with documents. Bring everything, she said. Don't leave anything out. So I did. I brought the title, the closing documents, every mail piece addressed to someone else, photos of the redecoration, screenshots of text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. She flipped through it all with quiet focus. Her eyes narrowed at the forged lease Lewis had tried showing the cops. They've done this before, she muttered. I leaned forward. What? This. Squatting under residency law. Not technically illegal if they follow the loopholes right. But it's theft in spirit. Some of these folks bounce from one foreclosed or transferred home to the next. Usually families with just enough legal knowledge to cause chaos. Can you fix it? Her face hardened. Yes, she said. But it's gonna get worse before it gets better. Worse? Yeah. She was right. The next week, I came home to find a birthday party in full swing. Balloons. Music. Kids. A grill fired up on my balcony. I stood there, stunned, while some kid ran past me screaming, face covered in cake. Cassandra walked up to me, holding a paper plate. Want a burger? She asked. I looked her dead in the eyes. This is my home. She smiled. Then maybe you should start acting like it. Trish filed the paperwork within 48 hours. Constructive eviction complaint, she called it. Quiet title petition too, just in case they try to challenge ownership. We're going for full possession. I didn't understand half of it, but the sound of someone taking my side was enough. Finally, it felt like the fight had started on paper, not just in my living room. But court moves slow. Slower than anger. Slower than fear. Meanwhile, life inside the apartment kept turning into a circus. They started calling it, the house. Lewis referred to it like they owned it. We'll be out of the house by summer, he said one morning while brushing his teeth at my sink. Once we sort some things. Cassandra started giving people my address. I found out when I got a package addressed to the Bell family. Some charity thing. Free diapers and coupons. I left the box outside. It disappeared by morning. I stopped trying to act normal. I was late to work. I was short with people. I was sleeping 2 hours a night and eating whatever didn't require a stove. I couldn't bring myself to cook in their kitchen. One night, I came home to find all the lights off. Finally, I thought. They're gone. I stepped in, locked the door, crept down the hall in the dark. And then I heard it. A TV. Volume low. Coming from the second bedroom. I opened the door. A kid was sleeping in there. Couldn't have been older than 10. Blanket pulled over his head, cartoons flickering on the screen. He wasn't one of theirs. I'd never seen him before. Cassandra's voice came from behind me. My cousin's kid. Just for a week. I turned, trying to process that. You're babysitting in a home that isn't yours? She looked confused. Like I was the one crossing a line. They had nowhere else, she said. And it's just for now. I didn't even respond. Just walked out. Sat on the steps out front in the cold until the sun came up. I started documenting everything. Every entry. Every exit. Photos of who walked in. Videos. Audio recordings. Names, dates, timestamps. Trish told me to build the case like no one believes you. At first I thought that was paranoid. But then I posted about it, just once. On a forum. r/legal advice or something like that. I explained my situation. The replies? You bought a lemon, man. Sounds like squatters' rights. Why didn't your realtor warn you? Fake story. Call the cops. Get a gun. I stopped replying after a while. No one believed how bad it was. No one thought it could happen here. But it was happening. And I was losing my mind. The building manager wanted nothing to do with it. Not my problem, he said when I showed up at his office. You're the owner now. We don't mediate disputes. I pointed out that multiple people were receiving mail there without leases. He shrugged. Technically, that doesn't violate HOA policy. So I can move into someone else's unit and just stay? He leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head. Long as no one proves you didn't live there before. It's harder than you'd think to get someone out. I left that office feeling like gravity had changed. Like up wasn't up anymore. Like rules were only for people who followed them. Then came the petition. Cassandra filed it at the courthouse, against me. I got the letter in the mail like a gut punch. Request for temporary protective resident status. She claimed I'd threatened her. Claimed I'd tried to lock her out of her long-time home. She used phrases like cohabitant intimidation and hostile displacement. Trish read the document and let out a slow breath through her nose. Smart, she said. She's playing for time. If the judge grants it, she buys herself 60 to 90 days of legally sanctioned stay. But it's my place. How can she file something like this? Because the system assumes you're lying until you prove otherwise. The court date was 3 weeks away. 3 more weeks of this hell. That night, I knocked on Cassandra's door, the second bedroom she'd claimed. She opened it with a smirk. You planning to call the cops again? I held up the document. You really want to go this far? She didn't blink. I've lived here longer than you, she said. And I can prove it. I've got mail, I've got witnesses, I've got family. You don't have a deed, I snapped. She stepped forward, her voice low. You think a deed means you can just erase people? You walked in here thinking you won something. But this place? It's been ours for years. Just because you paid a bank doesn't mean it's yours. I stared at her, speechless. She shut the door in my face. That night I dreamed I was drowning. Except it wasn't water. It was paperwork. Forms and notices and contracts and eviction requests. I opened my mouth to scream, and court filings poured out. I woke up with my heart pounding and my fists clenched. Then I heard voices in the kitchen. Someone was making pancakes. In my pan. The morning of the hearing, I looked in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize myself. Eyes bloodshot. Beard patchy. Pale as hell. I hadn't had a full night's sleep in almost 2 weeks. I'd been staying in my truck more often than not, parked in different lots around town because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me sleep in the driveway. I tied my tie with shaky fingers. It felt ridiculous, like dressing up to beg for something I already owned. Trish met me outside the courthouse. She looked calm. I tried to mirror that, but my hands were sweating through my sleeves. "I've seen worse," she said, flipping through her binder. "Don't talk unless the judge asks you something. Let me handle it." Inside, Cassandra showed up in a long cardigan, her hair neatly done, holding a stack of mail with my address on it. She had that soft, worried look, the kind people use when they're about to lie convincingly. Her statement was full of rehearsed emotion. How she'd lived there, off and on for years, how she'd been helping her cousin Louis take care of the place while it went through ownership confusion, how she felt unsafe with me threatening to evict without cause. The judge looked at her. Then at Trish. Then at me. "You're saying you own this property?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, sliding forward the deed and mortgage papers. "Have you ever rented to the respondent?" "No, sir. She moved in after I bought it. She was never a tenant." The judge rubbed his eyes. Then Trish stepped in, calm as a surgeon. "Your Honor," she said, "what the respondent is attempting here is a delay tactic under abuse of the Protective Residence Statute. She is not a tenant. She was not in possession prior to the title transfer. There was no rental agreement. There is no history of payment. The plaintiff has already initiated legal action for possession, and this filing is an obstruction." She handed over photos, screenshots of security footage, mail stamps, text messages from Louis. She even had a list of previous addresses tied to Cassandra, none of which were mine. The judge read everything slowly. Then he sighed. "Motion denied," he said. "This is a civil matter, not grounds for protective occupancy." Ms. Bell, you have 14 days to respond to the quiet title action. Until then, no further filings without counsel. Cassandra said nothing. Just tightened her lips. But when I walked out of that courtroom, I felt like I'd stepped into sunlight after weeks underground. It wasn't over, but something had cracked. 2 days later, Louis disappeared. I came home to silence. His shoes were gone. His duffel. The sound of basketball games no longer echoed from the living room. The sink was finally empty. I checked the closet he used, clean. The couch? Still smelled like him, but empty. I didn't cheer. I knew better. Sure enough, Cassandra was still there. Alone now, but acting like she was the one who'd inherited the place. "You scared him off," she said, arms crossed as I entered the kitchen. "He was trying to make peace." "He was trespassing," I said. She laughed. "No such thing when you've got a key." I didn't answer. Just turned and walked to my room. That was when I noticed the smell. Rotten. Not overwhelming, but there. Musty. Faint. Like food gone bad somewhere out of reach. I searched the place top to bottom. Nothing. But I knew that smell. It had a way of lingering. It wasn't just old trash. It was something hidden. That night, I pulled open the access panel to the crawl space. I hadn't looked in there since moving in. No reason to. Just pipes, wiring, insulation. Except now, there was something else. Blankets. A plastic tub with clothes. A half-empty bottle of water. A bag of chips. A goddamn pillow. Someone had been sleeping under my floor. Living down there. Like a rat. I recorded everything. Took photos. Sent them to Trish. She called me within minutes. "That's constructive occupancy," she said. But if they were hiding there without your knowledge, it strengthens your claim. Keep everything. Don't touch it until I file the supplement. I sat on the floor beside the access panel, feeling sick. Someone had been inches away, listening to me sleep. Listening to my phone calls. Living right below my feet like it was nothing. This wasn't just about squatting anymore. This was invasion. The next morning, I changed the locks again. Not just the door this time. The windows. The back gate. Even the mailbox. I installed a camera inside the crawl space. Then I left for work, heart pounding the whole day, waiting to see if they'd come back. They didn't. But that night, the footage showed movement. The flap pushed open. A hand. Then a face. A different one. Not Louis. Not Cassandra. Someone else. I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with a bat in my lap until morning. Trish filed for an emergency injunction. The hearing was fast-tracked. We were asking for expedited possession and a court order to remove all unauthorized persons immediately. I printed the stills from the crawlspace video and kept them in my pocket like a talisman. Proof. Not just of what they were doing. But that I wasn't crazy. Not anymore. The judge didn't take long this time. Trish laid it all out: video evidence, photographs, dates, witness affidavits. She even had statements from 2 neighbors who'd noticed strange people coming in and out of my unit for weeks. One old guy across the hall said he saw Louis giving a key to a woman in a hoodie. Another neighbor swore she heard power tools late at night, probably the lock drilling. When Trish played the crawlspace footage, the judge leaned forward. He didn't say much. Just nodded, eyes dark. "This is no longer a question of disputed tenancy," he said. "This is illegal occupation and potential trespassing under residential code." Boom. That was it. He granted immediate writ of possession. Signed off on an emergency order allowing law enforcement to remove all non-owners or unauthorized persons from the premises. Trish gave me a rare smile as we stepped outside. "You just won your house back," she said. But it didn't feel like a win. Not yet. The sheriff's office sent 2 deputies the next morning. I stood on the sidewalk as they knocked, announced, and stepped inside. Cassandra was in the kitchen, mid-toast. The kid from a few nights back sat on the couch, clutching a tablet. She looked up like they were Jehovah's Witnesses, not law enforcement. "Ma'am," one of the deputies said, "you're being ordered to vacate immediately." She blinked, then set her toast down, slow. "Are you serious?" "Yes, ma'am. Your name is not on the title, lease, or utility accounts. You've been served and failed to respond." "I live here," she said, voice rising. "My cousin, Louis, he gave me keys." "Louis doesn't live here either." They gave her 20 minutes to pack. She cried. Cursed me under her breath. The kid just looked confused. "You think you've won," she said as she walked past me with a duffel bag on one shoulder and the kid trailing behind. "But this place has bad luck. You'll see." I didn't say anything. Didn't gloat. Didn't smile. I just locked the door behind her and leaned against it, feeling my knees shake. That night, the silence felt radioactive. Too heavy. Too empty. I walked room to room like a ghost. The kitchen still smelled faintly like burnt toast. Her toast. My toaster. I threw it in the trash. I unplugged every outlet, opened every drawer. Found stray socks under the bed in the second room. A sippy cup wedged under the couch. 3 pacifiers in the closet. 2 empty beer cans behind the toilet. I took it all out. Every reminder. Every leftover. By 3 a.m., the only thing left in the house was me. I slept with the door bolted, the camera app open on my phone. No movement in the crawlspace. No strange knocks. No laughter from the kitchen. Just me, finally, alone. And yet, I kept hearing echoes. Not real ones. Not ghosts. Just memories. The echo of Louis saying, "You'll get used to it." Cassandra muttering, "You don't deserve this place." The kid crying in the hallway. Even silence carries weight when it follows chaos. The next day, I brought in a locksmith again, a professional this time. I told him I wanted every lock replaced. Not just the front. All of them. He looked at me like I was paranoid. "You expecting a break-in?" he asked, half joking. I just nodded. He got to work. 3 hours later, I had a new key, new security cameras, and peace of mind for the first time in 2 months. I slept on the floor that night. Not because I had to. But because I wanted to. To feel the cold tiles under my back and remind myself it was real. That I'd taken it all back. But the fight wasn't quite over. The next morning, I found graffiti on my front door. Just one word, thief. Spray painted in red. I stared at it a long time. Then I got a bucket, a brush, and started scrubbing. No tears. No rage. Just quiet motion. Trish called later that week. Said Cassandra had tried filing something again, an appeal, some kind of complaint about inhumane treatment. The judge threw it out without a hearing. "This chapter's closed," she said. I asked her what her bill would be. She said she'd send it next month. "You earned this one," she added before hanging up. It took a while to feel like a home again. I bought new furniture. Installed motion lights. Set up new Wi-Fi. Got a cat. Started inviting friends over, one at a time. Told them bits and pieces. They always asked, "How did that even happen?" And I never had a good answer. Just this. The system isn't built to protect the owner. Not unless you fight. And even then, it's like trying to dig a trench with a spoon. But if you keep at it. If you don't quit. You might just get your damn house back. There's this thing no one tells you about reclaiming your home, about winning, finally, after months of chaos. You still jump at noises. The fight leaves, but the war lingers in your bones. Even after the locks were changed and the cameras installed, I couldn't relax. I still opened closets slow. Still turned on lights before walking into rooms. Still kept the bat next to my bed. I caught myself checking the crawlspace camera every night before I slept, even when it hadn't shown a blip in weeks. Paranoia doesn't have an off switch. It's a habit now. One night, I went out back to take the trash out. I hadn't stepped into the backyard since before the mess started. The camper was still there. The one I used to sleep in when the place was overrun. A sad little pod behind a fence, like a coffin with curtains. I climbed inside. It still smelled like mildew and cold nights. The bed was rumpled. A paperback was still lying face down where I'd last dropped it. My old winter coat was draped over the edge. I sat there a while, in silence. Thought about all the nights I lay awake in that thing, listening to them move inside my house. Laughing. Arguing. Watching TV. I remember hearing a song play through the walls once, something upbeat, something catchy, and it made me want to scream. Because they were living. Thriving. While I sat outside in the dark like a ghost. I slept in the camper that night. One last time. Work had started to notice the change in me. People stopped asking how I was doing. Stopped inviting me to things. I could see the distance in their eyes when I showed up late or zoned out in meetings. I wasn't angry. I didn't blame them. I wouldn't want to be around me either. I'd become a guy whose life revolved around cameras, court dates, and whispered footsteps at night. I'd become my own horror story. I ran into one of the neighbors a few weeks after everything ended. The guy across the hall, the one who'd given a statement during the hearing. He was walking his dog and stopped to chat, said he was glad it was all over. Then he dropped something I wasn't ready for. You know, he said, they had other people over. Not just Louis or Cassandra. Sometimes real late. Kinda sketchy types. I didn't want to say anything during court, but they were passing stuff around. Money, maybe packages. Could have been something shady. I froze. Why didn't you say anything before? He shrugged. Didn't want to get involved. You seemed like you were handling it. I thanked him and went back inside. And then I sat in the hallway, staring at the floor, realizing how thin the line had been. Not just squatters. Could have been drugs. Guns. God knows what. All under my roof. And no one would have stopped it in time. I visited Trisha's office not long after that. Not for more legal help. Just to pay her. She handed me the invoice without a word. I read the number and almost laughed. It was cheaper than I expected, but still more than I had in my account. I'll pay it in parts, I said. I'm good for it. She nodded. I know. I hesitated at the door. Why'd you take my case? I asked. You don't exactly advertise for this kind of thing. She leaned back in her chair, tired eyes watching me. Because it happened to someone I knew, she said. And nobody helped them. I nodded, once. That was all I needed to hear. That weekend, I went to the hardware store. Bought paint. Sandpaper. A ladder. Some plaster. Started fixing the front door, where they'd spray-painted "thief." I'd scrubbed it off, but the stain remained. Ghosted in red, like a scar. I sanded. Filled. Painted. 3 coats. Didn't stop until it looked like new. And when I stepped back, I didn't see the past anymore. I saw my house. Finally. I didn't invite anyone over for a long time. Not out of shame. Just preservation. I'd spent so long watching strangers cross my threshold without asking that now, the thought of letting someone in, anyone, felt like giving up a piece of myself. Even the mailman didn't come up the walk anymore. I had a P.O. box now. Safer. Cleaner. Controlled. The house was quiet, sure. But not peaceful. Not yet. The quiet had a hum to it. Like the walls remembered everything. One afternoon, I heard a knock. My chest tightened. Old reflex. I peeked through the camera feed. Just a kid, maybe 10, standing awkwardly with a bike helmet in hand. I opened the door a crack. He stepped back immediately. Sorry, he said. Are you the guy who lives here now? Yeah. He nodded. Did the lady with the little dog move away? I blinked. Lady with the dog? Yeah. She used to give me Gatorade when I was riding by. Said she lived here. Not anymore. Oh, he said, looking down. Okay. She was nice. I didn't respond. Just gave a polite nod. He stood there a second longer, like he wanted to ask something else. But then he got on his bike and pedaled off. I closed the door and leaned against it, the wood warm from the sun. Nice. That's what he said. Even after all of it, she'd handed out drinks to kids. Fed them stories about her being the rightful resident. It was always a performance with her. I was just the audience who'd never clapped. I finally opened the second bedroom a few days later. The room Cassandra had claimed. I'd avoided it since she left. Something about it made my stomach twist. Like a wound I didn't want to look at. The smell was gone, thankfully. I'd scrubbed enough. But the room still held echoes. Faint dents in the wall where a picture frame had hung. A faint stain in the corner. A thumbtack left in the baseboard. I stripped it bare. Painted it. Put in a desk. Turned it into an office. Not because I needed one. But because I chose what it became. That mattered. Trish emailed me one last time that month. No formalities, just a single line. Congratulations. Title is officially clear. They won't be back. I stared at it for a long time. Then I printed it. Framed it. Hung it by the door. It's not art, but it's honest. The court costs hit me later, after the relief faded. I drained the last of my savings paying off Trish's final invoice. Cancelled my trip back home to see my sister. Sold a few things online to buy groceries. But I didn't regret a penny. Owning something shouldn't be a gamble. But it is. At least in this country. You don't own anything, not really, until you defend it. Until you stand in front of a judge, trembling, and say, "That's mine," while someone else tries to take it from you. Only then does it become yours. One night, I made dinner properly for the first time. Steak. Potatoes. Glass of red wine. I played old blues records on a dusty little speaker. Let the music fill the house. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, fork in hand, and took the first bite in silence. Not rushed. Not standing over the sink. Not from a drive-through bag. Just dinner. In peace. That might not sound like much. But to me, it was the sound of the world finally going quiet. The first time I slept through the night, it caught me off guard. I woke up around 9 a.m., blinking against the sun bleeding through the blinds. No sounds. No footsteps. No doors creaking open in the dark. Just stillness. Real, honest stillness. I lay there a while, arms behind my head, watching the ceiling. Then I laughed, quiet and tired and maybe a little crazy. It had been so long since peace wasn't something I had to guard like a secret. This wasn't survival anymore. This was living. I started fixing things. Not just out of necessity, out of choice. The place had taken a beating, scuffed baseboards, chipped tiles, curtain rods ripped out of drywall. I patched and painted, replaced outlets, resealed the windows. Every improvement felt like a statement, I'm still here. Neighbors started noticing. I'd nod at them when I came back from the hardware store, paint-streaked and tired. Some nodded back, some didn't. A few still avoided eye contact. Probably didn't want to get involved in case the circus rolled back into town. But the guy from across the hall finally said something. "Looks better," he muttered one afternoon, holding a grocery bag in one hand, leash in the other. "Quiet now." "Yeah," I said. "Real quiet." He didn't say more. Didn't need to. One afternoon, I found a spare key taped inside the hall vent. Old, rusted, wrapped in masking tape. Took me a while to figure out what it was. Then I realized, that was how they kept getting in. Louis or Cassandra or one of the others had hidden keys throughout the place. I pulled every vent cover, every panel. Found 2 more. One in the back of a kitchen drawer, another under the bathroom sink. That night, I built a small fire in the backyard grill. Dropped the keys in one by one. Watched them glow, melt, vanish. I kept the cameras up. Not because I thought they'd come back. But because I needed to know if they did. I watched them less, though. Started turning off the alerts. Started reclaiming my attention. I'd been hyper-aware for too long, trained to hear every bump, every whisper, every unfamiliar footstep. But now, when the house creaked, I didn't jump. I just listened. And let it pass. About a month after the final ruling, I ran into Louis. It was at a gas station, of all places. He was filling up a beat-up Honda, hoodie pulled low, eyes tired. We locked eyes as I stepped out of my truck. He gave a slow nod. Then a smirk. "You still in the house?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Didn't think you'd last." I did. He didn't say anything for a beat. Then, "You were just supposed to flip it, man. That's what the others did. Nobody stays." "I'm not the others." Another beat. Then he climbed back into his car, started the engine, and drove off without another word. I stood there a minute, watching his taillights fade. No anger. No fear. Just something cold and clean. Like closure. I never saw him again. Didn't need to. He belonged to the past now. And I wasn't living there anymore. The next week, I invited my sister to visit. She stood in the doorway, wide-eyed, suitcase still in hand. "Damn," she said. "It actually looks like a home." "It is a home," I told her. She walked through the rooms like she was inspecting something sacred. When she got to the back window and saw the old camper still sitting behind the fence, she turned. "You living out there now?" "Not anymore," I said. "That chapter's closed." She nodded. Then we ordered pizza, sat on the floor with paper plates, and talked until midnight. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to check the door even once. I just lived. And that was enough. The day I took down the cameras, it felt like removing a cast. They'd been up so long they blended into the walls, those little black lenses blinking in silence, always watching. At first, they were lifelines. Then just reminders. Of what happened. Of who I used to be in this place. Paranoid. Angry. Cornered. But that wasn't me anymore. So I took a ladder, unhooked each one, packed them away. I kept the footage, though. On a hard drive tucked into a drawer. Not out of fear. Just memory. Like scars you don't try to cover anymore. The title arrived in the mail that week, an official stamped copy, final and complete. No disputes pending, no names lingering in the fine print. Just mine. I ran my fingers over it like it might disappear. The paper felt heavier than it looked. Not because of what it was. Because of what it meant. I framed that too. Right beside the door. Two things hang there now, Trisha's email and the final title. Proof that the fight ended. That the house is mine. Not because I paid for it, not just because I earned it. But because I refused to leave. A few days later, I hosted a small dinner. First time. Just 4 people, my sister, a buddy from work, his girlfriend, and Trish. Yeah, I invited her. She almost didn't come, said she didn't mix business with social stuff. But I told her this wasn't business. This was thanks. She brought a bottle of wine and a quiet smile. Didn't say much, but when she looked around the place, I could tell she was taking it in. "You fixed the ceiling," she said at one point. "Yeah," I said. "I fixed everything." Dinner was loud, warm. We laughed. We ate too much. The kind of night that makes a house feel real, lived in, honest. After everyone left, I stood at the window, lights off, looking out at the street. No figures lurking. No unexpected knocks. Just quiet. The kind you earn. I still think about them sometimes. Not with hate. Not even with anger. Just clarity. Cassandra, Louis, the voices behind the walls, the dog I never saw. The birthday balloons. The toothbrushes. The face and the crawlspace. They were part of this house's history. But not part of my story anymore. I took down the old welcome mat last week. Threw it out. It was the one I'd bought when I first moved in, back when I thought a good deal was just a number on a piece of paper. I replaced it with a new one. Simple. Dark gray. Just one word stitched in white thread. Home. And now? I wake up without flinching. I cook in my kitchen without watching the hallway. I lock the doors, but not out of fear. Just habit. Sometimes, I sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watch the sun come up, and think about how close I came to losing it all. Not just the house. Myself. But I didn't. I stayed. I fought. I endured. And now, every creak in the floorboard sounds like mine. Every breath in this place feels earned. And every night I turn off the lights, close the door, and smile to myself. Because no one lives here but me. Not anymore. Not ever again.